So currently, if you were listening to Ortiz a few minutes ago, if you are a supplier of automotive products to both German and North American automakers, you must assess your product's failure modes and effects differently. One set of rules for AIAG and another one for VDA. And this is because there's a difference in the FEA manuals or the processes between the VDA, that's the German Association of Automotive Industry, and the Automotive Industry Action Group, the AIG, here in the United States, was kind of the VDA's counterpart. So the idea that you have two different manuals for two different agencies, let's say, adds complexity and extra work for automotive industry suppliers. So to address that problem, the AIAG and VDA have developed a harmonized FMEA manual, the draft of which has just been released. And according to FDA and AIG, a common set of FMEA requirements will enable suppliers to have a single FMEA business process and associated methods and tools to produce a robust, accurate, and complete FMEA that would meet the needs of all of their customers. So this is an important development for suppliers, and here to tell us more about it is Chad Kymal, CTO and founder of Omnex. Hi, Chad.
Hi, Dirk. How are you?
Pretty good. I should say that Chad's joining us via phone today, not Skype, so we won't get to see him live, but we'll get to listen to him. So Chad, set the stage here a little bit. US automakers and German automakers use a different FMEA process, right? This is a process that's documented for each of them, so they each have kind of their own, FMEA playbook, so to speak? Why is that a problem?
Well, Dirk, when you look at it, you could say Honda has a different format, GM has a different format, and as people who supply software actually for FMEAs, we're able to easily bridge the gap between, let's say, Honda and GM or the AIAG FMEA, but the VDA FMEA is significantly different. So much so that you have to make dramatic changes in the format of the FMEA. So I'll just say it like this: it's a lot of extra work to do AIAG and VDA, if customers ask it, and customers do. Second problem that that everybody faced for the large companies is that German parts of the organization was following a different format, believed in a different format than the rest of the world, I'll say. So that was also a big problem in terms of methodologies.
So Chad, can you
like that?
Can you maybe drill down into this a bit more for us and maybe give us a key way or two that the FMEA manuals, US and the VDA differ and what those differences cause?
Absolutely. And I'll look at the DFMEA and then I'll give you a PFMEA. In the DFMEA, the US looks at, when you look at the products, you can say there's a system. A system may have a subsystem. A subsystem may have components. So it's sort of like the way the bill of materials break down. When you do a VDA FMEA, you're looking at all three levels of the product at the same time. And when you look at the failure mode, let's say you're focusing on the subsystem, they look at the failure at the system level and say that's the effect. And they look at a failure at the component level and they say that's the cause. So they look at all three levels simultaneously. The Americans will look at any one of the levels and say, how can I just improve this level? If that makes any sense.
Yeah, and is one of those better than another? I mean, is kind of the American way of doing that, is that more valuable than the German way of doing it, or is there value in both of those?
I don't want to give a quick answer. I think each of those has, benefits to it. And so really, the harmonized method, should have married the two. And that's the advantage of integrating both the methods.
Well, tell us a little bit then about the new harmonized manual and what it's trying to accomplish, and maybe some of the highlights that might be, let's say, most valuable to people, to suppliers.
All right. So when you look at the harmonized manual, number one, there is a 6-step process for creating both DFMEAs and PFMEAs. So that's one. Second is we have adopted in the DFMEA looking at all 3 levels simultaneously. Okay? So which makes it so we think the competency requirements of people who know FMEAs have to go up a notch. Second is you may involve 3 levels of the supply chain at the same time, if you can imagine that, right? A lot of times when we work with customers, we find they just know their product. They don't know as much about the product, that it goes into, and they certainly don't know as much about the component or the component supply, or vice versa. So here, we're going to have to bring in not only the customer, we also have to bring in the supplier in being able to do a good FMEA. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And on one other big change for the Germans, for example, they're not used to the idea of recommended actions the way the Americans had it. And so we're adding recommended actions. And the recommended actions would go on the right-hand side of the FMEA, which they didn't do before. And the FMEAs now are very clearly delineating recommended actions which are preventive in nature and detective in nature, and they're including putting in a link for where, so the objective evidence of what has changed right into the FMEA. So very interesting, changes coming into place, and with the help of all the people listening, companies, organizations like Omnex, we're going to absolutely try to make sure the best methodology is adopted by the automotive industry.
Now,
We
go
ahead,
Chad, that the draft version, the draft version of this is out. Is that correct?
The draft is out. It's in a commenting period.
Okay.
I encourage the listeners to go and take a look at it. Of course, we're going to be adding a lot more insight into all the things I talked about in the webinar we're doing together next week.
That's right.
Quality Digest.
Yep.
And one more thing, Dirk, I want to make sure people know. American cars are doing very, very well. I put that TGW, J.D. Power's findings into the article I wrote for you guys. And I find people don't know that. They don't know for 2 years in a row, the American car makers have outpaced the Japanese in terms of TGW and the J.D. Power's ratings. So these things don't happen accidentally. And I especially put that into the FMEA dialogue to say, hey, things are improving, all the hard work is paying off, and things will, and one of your speakers is going to be talking about electronics and software in cars. And I have to say, that's the way I see the evolution of the FMEA trying to help. And at Omnex, we're going to be doing some additional webinars, and we're planning 3 webinars, Dirk and Mike, and the third one is going to be taking a critical analysis in terms of the changes that are happening in the car, and why it's important to adopt, these types of methodologies we are trying to adopt.
That's right. And as Chad has mentioned here, we do have a webinar coming up on this. So if you're interested in learning more about the topic, the new harmonized FMEA, we and Omnex Systems are presenting a webinar next week called the new AIAG VDA FMEA. The webinar happens next week on Tuesday, December 19th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And Chad here, who we just spoke with, will be your presenter, and I'm hosting. So keep an eye on your email inbox for an invitation. Or if you're on our website right now, there's a link right underneath the player page that links out to the registration page. So click on that and register. It's Chad's webinars are always cram-packed full of information, so you want to tune in for that. So Chad, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, guys.
All right, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye now.